Good evening and welcome to the virtual Rotary 7620 District Conference. As a reminder, if you need any assistance during this webinar, please go to support.goto.com/webinar and use their how-to guides to troubleshoot your issues. I would now like to introduce our MC for this evening, Nomi.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It is great to be here. And to start off our meeting, our first ever virtual Rotary District 7620 virtual conference. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nomi. If you're wondering who this stud with this amazing Hawaiian shirt sitting over here is, I am the outgoing president for the Rotary Club of College Park and the incoming district Rotary advocate person. I was told that means that I have to create new clubs in District 7620. So if you are in District 7620, if you are bored of your club, you want to start a new club, you want to do something different, please do not hesitate at all to reach out to me and let me know. You know, 2020 has been an interesting roller coaster for all of us so far. I thought I'd be sitting on our district governor's yacht right now with my fellow Rotarians on the water in Cambria by the Hyatt. But instead of that, I'm sitting here in front of a computer virtually having to talk to everyone because of this pandemic that has taken the world upside down. It takes courage, passion, respect, and a fearless attitude to step up to the plate to make things happen when the world turns upside down. And these are the characteristics that were portrayed by our district governor, Barton Goldenberg, who has given us and inspired us all to come together for one last time this Rotary year to get together for our virtual district conference. So thank you. Thank you for your determination. I applaud his efforts to do this, and I'm super excited to be here with you. I look forward to a fun and maybe a little bit of an educational weekend with you tonight and tomorrow. If you can join the whole thing, that's great. If you can't, just join tonight because I'm here and this is all you really want to see, I think, huh? How about that? Now, let's start this conference off in a traditional Rotary manner. We will get together and say the pledge and go into the Rotary four-way test. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The Rotary four-way test. The four-way test of the things that we think, say, or do is a test used by Rotarians worldwide as a moral code for personal and business relationships. The test can be applied to almost any aspect of life. It was later adopted by Rotary International, the Global Federation of Rotary, and service clubs. Please repeat after me. Number 1, is it the truth? Number 2, is it fair to all concerned? Number 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Number 4, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And for tonight's lineup, guys, oh man, we have an exciting night, exciting youth call to action. As you know, our district governor follows that very closely. We have our finalists from the four-way test speeches. They're going to be coming up here. We're going to be able to grade them. Matt May is going to be able to talk to us and tell us how he did what he did in this craziness. What I heard through the pipelines is when he was asked to do this, he was like, oh, no. This cannot happen. That's impossible. DG, you're crazy. How are you going to have this go virtually? But he did it. He's going to share with us on how he did that. We have Tom Thorfinson. He's the Chief Strategic Officer for Rotary International. Super excited to hear him. Our very own from District 7620, Jennifer Harris over here. She'll be talking to us about the Rotary Global Scholars Program. You know, a big, big shout out to Ashley Walters and Jennifer Coppett for making sure all this happens. You know, I did not make this script and call myself a stud. I promise you, I wouldn't have done that. That was all Jenny. That was all Jenny. Thanks, Jen. Appreciate it. You know, we have a great night planned tonight. Tomorrow, we have a great morning planned. I hope you all can join us tomorrow as well. I'm going to stop boring everyone. Let's get to the program. Without further ado, I would love to introduce our fearless leader, our district governor for District 7620, Barton Goldenberg.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome, distinguished 7620 Rotarians and guests. I realize I'm looking a little bit disheveled these days, but as you know, it's been a challenging few months for all of us, and I'm still looking to find a barber that's open in Montgomery County. Well, on a more serious note, I'm very pleased to be able to come together in camaraderie and friendship for this 2020 District 7620 conference. We've had a great year. And over the next 2 days, as Nomi has pointed out, you'll learn a little bit more about some of the district's accomplishments. To keep the conference lively and fun, we're going to use a variety of different presentation styles. You'll see some keynotes. You'll see different digital formats for panel discussions, structured sessions, and even some Rotary trivia polls. Speaking of polls, let's warm up by launching the first of our two polls, which we'll be using throughout the next 2 days. So Ashley, may I ask you to launch the first poll? And ladies and gentlemen, you'll see that on your screen. You're going to take your mouse or whatever you're using, and you're going to answer the question, what was the year that Rotary was founded? Was it 1905, 1915, or 1945? We'll give it about 20 seconds and okay, Ashley, why don't you tell us the results, please? Well, you got it right for 84% of you. And those 14% and that particularly 2%, well, we have education camps for people like you. But anyhow, it's 1905, and that is correct. Ashley, let's launch the second poll. So Rotary was instrumental in setting up the United Nations. Yes or no? Rotary was instrumental in setting up the United Nations. And again, we'll give it another couple of seconds. And what are the results, Ashley? That is correct, 91% of you. In fact, Rotarians contributed, and you may not know this, but to the actual drafting of the charter, to the preamble of the United Nations, to the articles on ECOSOC and the NGOs. And October 24th, 1945, the charter was ratified, United Nations came into existence, and Rotary was at the absolute forefront of the United Nations, and we're celebrating our 75th birthday with Rotary at this very time. Well, I'd like to now move on to our first keynote speaker, Tom Thorfinson, who is the Chief Strategy Officer of Rotary International. Now, Tom is currently employed in his role as Chief Strategy Officer, but he has a very interesting background. And I asked Tom to join us because I thought it was very important for you to hear where Rotary is headed over the next 5, 10, 15 years, wherever Tom wants to take us. Tom's been an active Rotarian and served in a number of volunteer capacities. He was the club president, as many of us are, in this case in 1992, 1993. He became district governor in 1996, 1997. He joined as a member of Rotary International Board of Directors from 2009 to 2011. He served as Rotary's vice president from 2010 to 2011. In 2015, Tom was selected to serve as a trustee on the Rotary Foundation, and then a year later, he was selected to serve as vice chair of the Board of Trustees for the Rotary Foundation. During this period of time, Tom has taken a personal passion towards visiting Haiti in an effort to help with service trips for water and sanitation issues in that country. And then in October of 2016, Tom resigned from the trustees to take on the position of Chief Strategy Officer. He was employed prior to Rotary for 30 years in the private sector of corporate law inside the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. So we have this unique capability of putting together 30 years of corporate law, corporate governance practice, and his extensive volunteering experience to bring a fresh volunteering perspective to the position of Chief Strategy Officer for Rotary. That's the official introduction. But I also want to tell you on a personal level, I've had the pleasure of working with Tom for the last couple of years. He's a really nice fellow. He knows his stuff real well. He's navigated a very challenging Rotary International board for a number of years. He's greatly respected across all of Rotary, and we're very fortunate to have Tom as our keynote speaker tonight. And with that, Tom, I give you in traditional District 7620 a hearty welcome, and we're happy to have you here.
Well, it's great to be with you, and I really appreciate the introduction, and good evening to everyone. It is a pleasure to present to you, to have this opportunity to talk to you. And I will tell you, the speech that I'm presenting is not the speech that I've been giving for the last 3 years. As many of us have experienced, Rotary has changed, and we're changing rapidly, obviously, due to the pandemic. So for you, it's something new. It is new for me. And this presentation is Rotary, looking Rotary into the future, but keeping in mind the impact of the pandemic on what we're doing. So if we could move forward to the slide. So these are a couple of quotes that I think help us set the tone. And I think it's really important for us to keep in mind. Number one, the importance of learning from this and pivoting quickly. And second, preparing to actually benefit from the experience and the opportunity to learn remotely. I myself am sitting at home in Minnesota. It is my home. It's where I practice law. It is where my family is. And yet for the last 3.5 years, I have been living in Evanston, Illinois, working at headquarters for Rotary International and spending a lot of time commuting back and forth on weekends to Minnesota. So suddenly I find myself here working every day with a 2-minute commute as I move from one room to the next in my house, as many of us are experiencing. And it's quite a different experience. What is amazing for us is to think of what has happened to your business, to your opportunities. But let me put it in the context of Rotary today. If you had the opportunity and were able to join the International Convention for the first time ever this last weekend, we launched a virtual Rotary International Convention. We did it on less than 2 months' notice. We converted from what is an event team based on in-person meetings, an event team that is extremely good at putting together the stage, the platform, setting up facilities and hotel rooms and travel and working through all of those issues related to catering and crowd movement. And suddenly that group became a technology group focused on putting together a presentation to you and to Rotarians around the world that is totally an online digital experience. And it's quite a pivot for our organization. In terms of our staff, we had 287 staff members involved in making that happen. And that's the kind of pivot that we're talking about with Rotary today and with you in terms of your opportunities moving forward. So next slide, if we could. So this slide I put together for you, and it was done by two teams that I manage for the organization. One is the Business Intelligence Group, and the other is the Research and Evaluation team. What you see in the blue line is the membership of Rotary worldwide since the beginning. And fortunately, the quiz that you just went through was before this slide, because as you can see, our membership started in the year 1905. The blue line shows the trend in membership and the upward trend that existed from 1905 to 1995. And then you see the flat line that is experiencing with our membership since 1995 to present. And I suppose some of you may sit there and wonder, I was a governor in 1996. Am I somehow responsible for that sudden change in that line? And I hope I'm not. And hopefully I'm part of the group that's going to turn that line around and move it upwards again. Now, the intriguing thing is the yellow line, and then the gray bars that are set in contrast to that yellow and blue line. So the yellow line is our annual fund giving since the beginning of the annual fund. And what we're doing with this particular graph is comparing impact of world events against membership trends and annual giving trends. And we did this in the context of preparing the organization for what might come as a result of this pandemic. So in April, the board, many of us were anxious, we're worried about membership, and we're wondering what's going to happen with membership. What's interesting about this graph, as you can see, is there's not really a significant impact on membership for world events. You see a downturn during the Great Depression in the early 30s. You see a bit of a flattening during World War II. And then you see, even during the period where we have been largely flat, that the world events that we've experienced are not necessarily impacting membership in a significant way. And yet, if you look at annual giving, you can see that each of those world events that have happened in the context of our annual giving has an impact, and it's significant. And oftentimes it's almost immediate. So next slide, if we could. We have on our research team an individual who has a PhD in statistical analysis, and like me, a math major in college, but he was capable of moving on in graduate school. He took all of these world events and he did some regression planning against that, auto regression analysis. He took into account each of these world events and analyzed whether or not world events have a significant impact on membership or annual giving. And what he came up with is, quite frankly, the reality that world events generally do not impact membership in a significant way. And if they do, that tends to happen in the second or third year following a world event. Annual giving, however, impact is significant and it's almost immediate. So these are things that we need to know as Rotary leaders. We need to prepare for the shift that may happen, realize when it might happen, and anticipate those things and hopefully plan to minimize the impact. So we are shifting our focus from a fund development perspective, and you'll start to see it in the coming year, that there'll be a much heavier emphasis on annual giving and a tremendous push to make sure that people think about the impact of reducing their support of the annual fund of the Rotary Foundation. Now, what we're seeing in terms of trend is not necessarily unexpected. Annual fund giving is discretionary for us as Rotarians. Membership is a little more difficult. And so the first thing we might cut back on in Rotary is maybe our contributions to the foundation. We may continue our membership, but we may cut back on our giving. And that's something that we as leaders need to know, need to anticipate and prepare for. So next slide, if you could. So Manny Viedma is our PhD in statistical analysis, and he's projected membership for us going forward over the next 5 years. And within 2 standard deviations, he's able to predict for us what could happen in terms of membership. And this is valuable for us in terms of planning, and it's valuable for the members of the board to understand the moves that we might make going forward. So next slide, if we could. One of the things we have to keep in mind is what happens in Rotary in terms of membership. And this is something that Barton has paid attention to. And in fact, his background is tremendously valuable in this regard. The membership in Rotary turns over significantly. The number of people that have joined Rotary in the last 10 years exceeds the membership of Rotary today. 1.38 million have joined in the last 10 years, and yet our membership hovers slightly below 1.2 million. So we need to realize that there is a significant turnover in membership, and it means that we have a lot of customers that come in and don't stay. They come in and expect something and don't receive it. They leave unhappy. And the implications of that are twofold. It means we're spending a lot of time trying to land new customers. And in the process, we're sending out the door customers that are unhappy. And that leads to a communication issue where people are telling others that their experience in Rotary was not positive. So next slide, if you could. So in this context, we started analyzing membership in Rotary by year. And when I say year, think of yourself as a class. You joined in a certain year. So I joined in 1980. So my class is far beyond the 10 bar that you see here. I've been in Rotary 40 years, so there'd be a bar way out there that would be labeled as 40, meaning the class of people that joined Rotary 40 years ago. The class of people that are joining in this current year is the blue bar, and it's in the range of about 75,000 people a year that join Rotary. And that's the average over the last 5 years. We get to the second year and all the people have joined, and those that joined just at the end of the year, and now they're in their second year, this is our peak year in terms of membership. It is at 115, 110,000 people that are in Rotary on average every year that have been in Rotary maybe just barely a year and not more than 2 years in time. And so you can see the number of people in each class. Those that are on average have been in 3 years, you see a significant drop from 110 to 115,000 down to just barely over 80,000. It means that we're losing almost 1/3 of all the people that joined in the last 2 years and losing them in the third year. So let's move forward one slide. This is the same graph, but it's only for Rotary in Western Europe. Now let's go back quickly to the previous slide and then back to this slide. So backwards and then forwards. See how much better the Rotarians in Western Europe are doing in retaining their existing members. This is something that we need to study, we need to think about, and see if we in the rest of the Rotary world can perform in the same way that the Western European Rotarians are performing. They are really focused on their members, they're focused on the needs of their members, and they're focused on not losing someone after they join. Now, it could be that they're more careful when they ask to pick somebody that's likely to stay, but they're also doing a better job of engaging those people. So let's move forward. I love this quote. And you know, it's a political quote, I'll admit, and you can look at it in the context of World War II, but I will tell you that's where we are. We have a crisis on our hands. And the question is, are we going to take advantage of it? Or are we going to wring our hands and just engage in the woes and sadness? It is an opportunity for us moving forward. So let's go to the next slide. So I would love for you, in the context of this pandemic, to not lose sight of the 4 priorities that make up the core of our action plan moving forward. We need to increase our impact. We need to expand our reach. We want to enhance participant engagement. This is an area that Barton is an expert at, and we have actually engaged in a lot of in-depth conversations. In fact, I asked Barton if he could present to the board of directors of Rotary International, and we were fortunate that Barton was willing to do that, and he came in January of this year and presented to the board on the customer cycle, on the importance of engaging that participant the minute we bring them in the door so we don't lose them. which gets back to the graph that I was showing you previously. The importance of once that individual joins Rotary, that we focus on them, that we keep them, that we don't lose them. It's a lot less work to hang on to a customer than it is to gain a new customer. And that's what we're talking about here. So the final priority is increase our ability to adapt. And it is so appropriate in the context of the pandemic. We are an organization historically that is like the massive ocean liner that is so hard to turn. And yet here we find ourselves in a tremendously difficult time, in a pandemic, where our clubs literally, for the first time in their existence, cannot meet in person. And that has been the essence of one of our core values, fellowship. So intriguingly, over the course of just 2.5 to 3 weeks, 75% of the Rotary clubs worldwide transformed from clubs that meet in person to clubs that meet online. And 75% of our clubs today continue to meet online. About 10% are still meeting in person. And of course, I'm very concerned about the remaining percentage that is not meeting, that at best is communicating through emails or phone calls or text messages, and very little opportunity to connect. So before I move on, I want to just spend a minute talking about the first priority, because this is tremendously important. This priority, increase our impact, focuses on the value of lasting change in our service. In our research, we found that the individuals that we want to attract into Rotary, those individuals that are young professionals, in the context of their service, they want to guarantee that when they serve, that their service will be meaningful, that they'll be engaged in a cause that doesn't just make them feel good, but actually moves the needle. And so we're focusing on one of our priorities on impact, on making sure that when we engage in service, that we're driving forward with meaningful opportunities to create lasting impact and change. This means we have to measure. We have to start at the beginning, find out what is, the issues that are at hand, and where are, the data. What is the data on those issues? So a good example might be a literacy project. What's the literacy rate in your community? What's the performance of children as they enter into kindergarten? And if you engage in a meaningful program within your community to increase awareness of the learning gap for children that are born into the poorest families within your community, and engage in issuing opportunities and promoting early learning and reading, and then measure after a period of time the impact on those children as they march into the system. That's the kind of impact we're talking about. And I mentioned the early learning gap because our research has told us that among those people that we want to attract into Rotary, that is people between the ages of 25 and 50, literacy and early education is their #1 cause and #1 priority in terms of service. So let's move forward on the slide. So this slide is tremendously helpful for you if you're out to increase membership in your club, but also in the context of retaining those people that have joined Rotary in the last year or two. The most important reason people join or joined Rotary, that is those interested in joining and those that have actually joined, the #1 reason is local service. But what we're seeing is a shift in the next two categories. We're seeing a significant increase in interest in global service and an interest in personal growth. And personal growth are things like, is there a mentor for me in that club? Is there somebody that can help further my career? Is there someone that can open doors for me or give me some guidance in how to move forward as a professional? And these are areas that have been important, but are increasing in their importance among those people that are contemplating joining Rotary or have joined in the last 2 years. So let's move forward. So in the context of the pandemic, what are you doing? How are you pivoting? Are you providing alternatives to in-person meetings? What about training? What about events? And I love the fact that we're engaged in an online experience relative to a district conference. I will tell you that the number of people that attended the virtual convention this last weekend exceeded the number we've ever seen at a real convention, and it exceeded it by 15,000 people. We have seen over 60,000 people attend the virtual convention, when our top number prior to that was the Osaka convention, where there was approximately 43,000 people in attendance. It tells you there is an opportunity to pivot and increase awareness of your program, of your club, of your activities through the online experience. One of the things that I would urge you to consider is to look at your club, not now, not 6 months from now, but a year from now. Are there people attending your meetings today, your online meetings, that had drifted away, that had seldom attended? But they're attending now because they do not have to commute to your meeting. They have time to jump away. They can get on a convenient Zoom experience and participate in a meeting. Are those people going to be lost as you shift back to in-person meetings? Are you going to look at the opportunities to create a hybrid type of club meeting where people can attend either in person or online? Can you alternate your meetings? Can you provide events on top of your fundraising traditional in-person events that are online experiences? We had a telethon, and I don't like the term telethon because, quite frankly, it wasn't a telethon at all. But Rotary, through Jennifer Jones's leadership, put together a fundraiser that was an online experience. It might be called a cyberthon, as it were. And that event was an online experience encouraging people to give, and we raised over $600,000 for the Rotary Foundation, specifically with those funds being used to address disaster recovery in the context of COVID-19. So it's a totally new way for us to raise money that we would never have thought about doing absent this pandemic. Many of us are serving in different ways. You know, my club, like many clubs, we're not attending an in-person meeting. We're still meeting, of course, and we meet every week, but we no longer have a meal expense. So we've taken our meal money, and all of it is going specifically to a food bank in our community. But at the same time, we've got almost 60% of our club have been sewing masks, at least they previously did, for about 3 weeks, and providing those to various different organizations within our greater community area. So I would love you to start thinking about innovations and in different innovations that could really change the way in which we operate. Let me give you an example. Barton is your governor. We have 537 governors this year. We'll have 535 next year. We spend almost $10 million on reimbursing district governors for their expenses in serving Rotary. Now, these are actual expenses that they've incurred, but the vast majority of those expenses relate to travel visiting clubs, attending training events such as institutes, governor-elect training seminars, attending the International Assembly. We may, in February of this next year, have the first online International Assembly where we will engage in training all 535 governors-elect in a virtual online experience. If that occurs, we may see a savings of almost $4 million. Now, is the quality of training the same? Is the value of meeting in person significant? Yes, it is. But these are the things that we really need to step back and say, in the context of the future of this organization, what can we do differently that will allow us to move forward and maybe free up resources to invest in new opportunities and to otherwise move the organization forward? So, next slide. Let's move forward. Yeah. So here's a quote from a fellow that started pretty lively or certainly led Apple in a tremendous way for a number of years. And and this is an important message. You know, I was club president in 1992. I was president of a club that at that point, the Hopkins, Minnesota Rotary Club, we had 127 members when I took over the reins. I was 34 years of age, maybe at the time. I walked into a club, as I said, it was 127 members strong. The average age of the club was, I don't know, somewhere between 85 and 102. We had a good year. We did everything we'd done the year before. And I will tell you, I did a better job than most people did as president of that club. But what I did as president was a mistake. Because what I did is I managed the club. I did not lead the club. I managed to do what we had always done. And we did it a little bit better. We raised more money than we'd ever raised. We did the same projects we'd done the year before. With one exception, we put portable defibrillators in the meeting hall where we had lunch every week. But the reality was, I knew when I started my year as club president that we needed to change. I knew we were aging. I knew we had a club format that was not attractive to my generation. In fact, I had invited 4 or 5 of my friends in the previous 2 years to join that club, and not a single one had joined, because they walked in the door and their experience was anything but valuable to them. I knew we needed to change. I knew we needed to shorten the meetings, that we needed to engage our members better, and I didn't. I didn't lead. I managed, and that's the difference. Today, the Hopkins Rotary Club, in terms of membership, stands at 32 members. My lack of leadership was followed by a number of club presidents who managed the club and did not lead. Now, the good news is you apparently, if you're like me, you can screw up totally as club president and still move up the ladder very significantly within Rotary. But next slide, if we could. So the challenge is ours, to shape the future of Rotary. And I will tell you, we're in the midst of significant change, not just the pandemic. There is a very significant issue, obviously, in terms of social justice in our country today. In addition, the number 2 cause worldwide among people under the age of 40 is the environment. And up until today, our organization failed to engage at a corporate level in the environment as an avenue of service. I am pleased to say that the board today met and approved the environment as a new area of focus for Rotary moving forward. These could be controversial to many people. In the US, there are fewer people that believe in climate change than almost any other developed country in the world. But it's still a significant majority of people that do believe in it. And I will tell you that Rotary won't go down a path to take on things like climate change. What we will approve in terms of environmental projects will be significant and they will be impactful, but they will focus on the basic things related to it and will not probably enter into the really challenging areas. But Rotary is at a crossroads. If we're going to remain relevant and increase our relevance going forward, we're going to have to take on those tougher issues. Address things like diversity. And one of our 5 core values is diversity. And yet throughout the Rotary world, oftentimes you can walk into clubs that are anything but representative of the diversity in their own community. And if we're going to continue with diversity as a core value, we really need to start in our own backyards and look at our own clubs and address those issues. So the future of Rotary will be dependent on us taking advantage of opportunities. And we have an opportunity today to step up in the context of the environment, in the context of social issues that may be on the edge of political, but are issues that are tremendously important to the next generation of leaders. So with that, next slide, I want to end with a simple story. So I started the club that I'm in I started about 12 years ago. And one of the people I invited to join me in that new club as a charter member was a guy named Larry Olson. And I had met Larry on the softball diamond, and not the two of us playing, but the two of us as coaches of our daughters who were 5 years of age at the time. And we were coaching T-ball. And we coached together for a number of years. And I, of course, was a better coach than Larry, and my daughter was a better athlete than Larry's. But I will tell you, Larry was a great guy. And so when our club got started, I invited Larry to join. And Larry was in the coffee business. He was in the wholesale business of selling coffee beans to grocery stores, to coffee shops around the Minneapolis and St. Paul area, and hence the cup of coffee here. A few years later, after Larry joined and we started that club, I found myself on the board of directors. We had a club not at that point of about 35 members. Larry found out that he had cancer, and it was terminally ill, a terminal cancer. I was busy on the board, and I really couldn't attend my club meetings very often back then. But there was another fellow in our club that was a close friend of Larry. And he set up a system in our club where someone from our club every Wednesday night headed over to Larry's house to deliver to Larry and Linda a hot meal for 4 people. And every day that Larry was in a hospital, Jim Lindstrom was the guy. Jim set it up so that one of us as a member of that club would visit Larry when he was in the hospital. And when Larry passed away, every single member of our club, except for me, attended the funeral. And that is the core value of lasting friendship, of fellowship. And that is a core value that we need to fall back to. We need to go back to the future and recognize that at our core, we are this amazing combination of both fellowship and service. And today, much as ever, friendship and fellowship are critical to us. We need to reach out to people that maybe cannot figure out how to get online. We need to call the oldest members and make sure they're okay. We need to continue to meet, even if it's in a setting that isn't face-to-face. Because the people that we respect the most are those that have the same values that we have, the people that we've served with, the people that have stepped up to volunteer and help. And Larry is a constant reminder to me of one of our 5 core values and why Rotary needs to remain a viable organization going forward. So I appreciate the time to spend with you, to be able to talk to you, to talk about the future of Rotary. And I'm happy to answer questions. I'll tell you the future of Rotary will have a different way in which we meet on a regular basis. But at our core, we will remain committed to fellowship and service.
Tom, thank you very much for coming. I really, really appreciate it. That
Thanks, Nomi.
extremely inspired me. After this, I'm going to probably ask you for your presentation to go ahead and give it around District 7620 and inspire some more people who are not here today. However, before we get started with question and answers, I will ask District Governor Barton to come on as well with me for a question and answer session. However, from your speech of giving and the giving aspect, I have a $100 bill over here. And this $100 bill, I want to give to the Rotary Foundation, but not from myself. I want to give it into the name of one of the attendees who are attending this conference right now. And I'm going to ask a question, and whoever the first person who can answer the question in the chat box, I will submit this $100 bill to the Rotary Foundation under your name. And the question is, and Barton, you can't answer this one. Anybody else can, you can't. I came in to a theme song that Ashley Walters cringed to. She did not like it. What was the theme song that I came into tonight? Celebrate. I need something more than celebrate. We're always celebrating. Is that the name of it? I don't think that's the name of it. So we'll give that another couple minutes or so. Let that happen. While that's happening and people are figuring out what theme song I came out to, we'll start off with questions. Tom, once again, thank you very much for coming and joining us tonight. I know I do have a question over here that Rotaract is now part of the Rotary membership. What is the projection for the Rotaract growth worldwide, being that it's now with Rotary?
Yeah, that's a very good question. To be honest, it's pretty hard to project right now because we don't have viable data that we can rely on to even know where we are. In the context of Rotaract today, we don't charge dues. We don't ask Rotaractors, we don't require Rotaractors to register. And so we have at best a reasonable estimate of the number of Rotaractors worldwide. One of the first steps we're going to have to do is to get a handle on who is in Rotaract. And once we do, then we've got a measurement point to start with. And we have put out some figures. We would like to see a 30% growth in Rotaract over the next 4 years. But, you know, anytime you set a goal, you better have a measurement base to start with. And so we're struggling with that. And one of the things that the board has done this in the last 6 months is to approve a dues requirement for Rotaract members. It's not significant. I think it's something like $8 or $10 a year. But what that will give us is the data that we need. You know, to pay your dues, we need to know who you are. And that is a starting point. Once we know who you are, we've got contact information, we can engage you, we can ask what your interests are, and then we can build on that. So that's one of our struggles. We're actually looking at Rotaract as a new channel into Rotary. For years, we've looked at Rotaract as a program, as a service that we provide, and now we're looking at it in a completely different way. They are participants in the Rotary experience. We want to capture them. We want to engage them further. We don't want to lose them. And so that's our focus going forward.
Absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, there's a questions tab on the top in the webinar. Make sure you post your questions into that questions tab in that forum. Don't send it to a chat through me. Send it through there. And congratulations. I'm getting word that Faiza Malik from Ontario, Canada, who is logged on, named the theme song, which was to the Terps victory song. So congratulations. I will go ahead and make this $100 donation to the Rotary Foundation on behalf of you. Thank you very much for joining us and being with us tonight, Faiza. So for Rotaractors, Barton, anything for Tom?
Well, I think Tom, you know, as always, brought a tremendous insight into what's going to be important as we move forward. And I want to remember two things he said. Number one was pivot. You know, that's a basketball term where you are in a particular situation, and in order to win the game, you've got to make a pivot and do something different. You've got to get around the defensive player or whatever is required. And the concept of pivot, as Tom alluded to, for a very large ship like ours, is not always easy. But what I liked about what Tom said is he gave us some very clear examples of how clubs are looking at the importance of both retention and the importance of engagement to keep our members joined with Rotary over the long term. I think the most important message that Tom gave us is we have seen world wars, we have seen economic cycles, and we have seen lots of different events along the way that have impacted Rotary. But what we've also seen is that we don't get a membership drop off in the first year. If we continue to engage our members in 2020 and 2021, and we do a great job at engaging our members, a better job through the pivot that we need to make in 2020 and 2021, then we may not see any meaningful membership drop-off. And I think that's very significant for us to take home. If 60,000 Rotarians around the world can get together for an online international convention. That shows an incredible thirst and desire to be a part of the winning team that will pivot. And as a result of that, we have a situation where we as Rotarians have to really begin to think, how is it that we're going to allow our clubs to pivot? What can we do to drive the pivot? And most importantly, what are we going to do in 2020 and 2021 so that we don't have this incredible drop off in membership? Because we know if we can hold them through 2021, we will likely keep them over the long term. So I don't really want to ask Tom a question per se. I think he said two other things that were critically important that I heard. You know, if we're going to go after 30 to 50-year-olds, literacy is their number one interest. So ask yourself, how much are you promoting in your local communities for literacy to attract those 30 to 50-year-old potential Rotarians? He also said the number two cause is the environment for those that are less than 40 years old. And it's a wonderful story that Rotary has agreed of a new area of focus moving forward called environment. So we're doing the right things as Rotary, but we as clubs, you as district, Rotarians, as presidents, as assistant governors, you're the folks that now have to come in and ask the question, what is it that you can do differently that will allow you to bring in those 30 to 50, that will allow you to bring in those 40, the younger than 40, and how can we leverage all of the tools that we have, digital marketing, outbound campaigns, as a part of our pivot to bring them in and keep them there. And so with that in mind, Tom, I just wanted to share those thoughts. There's no question per se.
Yep. No, you're right on with the comments. So
Thank you. Tom, so I have a question from Daniel Fisher from Metro Bethesda. He's asking, the membership curve has been flat for years, as shown, and there's a lot of membership churn. Can you talk about the dynamic of this?
Yeah, there's quite a bit of regionalization that's involved in what's happening with our membership. So we continue to grow in developing countries, and in particular in Asia. Over the course of the last 8 years, the membership drop in Canada and the United States is almost exactly equal to the growth in membership in India and in Korea combined. And so what's happening is it remains valuable for people to join in India and in Korea, and yet obviously we're not marketing ourselves and delivering value in the United States. In terms of growth, the only growth that we're seeing in the United States is new club formation. We struggle with existing clubs in most cases. And so we're emphasizing, in the context of growth, is flexibility in new club formation. And quite frankly, if we're going to see a turnaround, more than anything, it's going to come out of new club formation, and it's going to be clubs that really are new models. And so the hybrid model I talked about, which is both clubs that might meet online and in person in either a combined format or an alternating format, is something to really consider today to move the needle. The reasons why people are not staying is the value proposition. They're coming in the door, they're experiencing something that is not valuable to them. They expect A and they're getting B. And literally, our brand promise is that you're going to walk in the door and you're going to be sitting down with leaders, you're going to exchange ideas, and then you're going to take action. That's our brand promise. We're not delivering on that promise in many cases. People are walking in the door. They're not invited to the party to exchange ideas. They're not necessarily offered opportunities to serve that are attractive to them. So the opportunity to be in a club with other leaders and take action is not happening. And if it is, it's typically a cause that isn't impactful or is a cause that the person's not really interested in. They come in the door and they find that this is what the club's doing over here. And they, in turn, they want to see literacy, or they want to see environmental action, and they want mentors, they want connections, and that's not happening. So in the United States, We can specifically say that clubs oftentimes don't deliver. And those that are delivering are, of course, the new clubs that are formed, and they're formed by those people that are new to Rotary. And so they form that club in the fashion in which they want it to be. And so they're staying. And so
Absolutely.
reformation of clubs is one of the things to look at.
As I had mentioned before, I think that's my new role for next year on the district level, to reformat new clubs. So with that in thought, I know you briefly touched on it. What are your thoughts a little bit more on e-clubs, right? I know you spoke about the hybrid, and Jennifer Coppett, who's our district membership chair, she would also like to know a little bit more about what your thoughts are on e-clubs.
So e-clubs haven't really moved the needle for us in the past, but quite frankly, most of the world really wasn't comfortable with the Zoom format. And now we're in a world where we're all very comfortable with meeting online, whether it's GoToMeeting, whether it's Zoom, whether it's Teams, whatever the format is. So I think there's opportunity now that's more significant in the context of e-clubs versus in-person meetings. But I will tell you, it's the substance of the club that's critical. Is the club, whether it's online or in person, is the club delivering value? Is it engaged in service that's impactful? Is it actually engaging its members and delivering value? Take a look at that slide that I talked about in terms of why people join. It's local service. It's the opportunities to connect and grow their personal growth, and it's global service. So how many clubs, whether it's an e-club or an in-person club, are delivering on those reasons why people have joined? And so that becomes critical for us.
Absolutely. And from Mary, I have, what are your goals for membership and foundation numbers in the next few years?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Based on the graph that I showed you, our leadership is actually waiting until they see the August numbers for this year to even look at the goals that they will set for fiscal year 22. And I'm not talking about the year that starts July 1 of 2020, but the year of fiscal year that starts July 1 of 2021. Never before have I had leaders that have waited until August of the year before they serve to start talking about setting their goals. And we're all anxiously wondering, will annual giving really take a significant hit? And right now it's looking that way. Membership is down slightly, but that's what we've done worldwide for the last 5 years. We've been down slightly every year for the last 5 years. So what I would anticipate in terms of membership, to be honest, absent some real significant change in the way clubs meet, I will continue to see a loss of membership of somewhere in the range of 0.5% or 1% over the course of the next 2 years. Annual giving, we'll see a significant drop for a year, but I think we're going to pivot quickly and really refocus on every Rotarian every year, really refocus on Paul Harris Society members, people that commit to $1,000 or more per year, communicating to those that are our best supporters that we really need their support right now, because there's going to be a lot of new members that are going to struggle to contribute. And so those of us that have been able to contribute more, maybe this is a very good year to kick it up a notch and make up for that person in your club that is struggling financially and maybe can't make that contribution. So we are looking at very flat numbers for membership, or slight decline and a downturn in annual giving. We continue to increase significantly in planned giving. And part of that is the aging of our membership. They're at that point where they're looking at the legacies that they want to leave.
Absolutely. So when we take a look at membership as a whole throughout the United States, obviously sitting in Evanston, you're looking at each district, each zone, etc. What areas are there? Any specific areas in the U.S. that are more successful than other areas, and if so, what might be the contributing factor to that?
So the areas that are performing the best are the southeast. Actually, the zone that you're a part of is one of the stronger zones. California remains, that is the West Coast, remains strong. Midwest has been steady. It's where Rotary was created, and many of the core values are strong. We are performing and continue to perform well in what I would call mid-sized cities. The Madison, Wisconsins of the world. Our urban performance is extremely poor. In our per capita penetration into major urban areas, in major metropolitan areas, is anything but strong. And that's why we need to look at new avenues to bring people in. The individuals we want to attract are people that are in major urban areas, that are extremely active, that care, but maybe don't have the time that we would normally expect for a Rotary commitment. And so online opportunities, different formats in the ways people meet, and cause-driven clubs seem to be growing and growing significantly. My district in the last 2 months has formed an environmental club. They've formed a veterans club, and they formed a club that's focused on child trafficking, human trafficking. And all three of those clubs were started fairly quickly, and they were focused on causes that were deemed to be popular in the areas where they were starting those clubs. And that's the kind of unique approaches that we need to start looking at to try to revitalize Rotary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And how can we better engage Rotary alumni post programs to create a pipeline of membership members and engage them to become members? Right? Like the Rotary Ambassador Scholar programs, Peace Fellow program.
Yeah, the guy that should answer that is probably Barton rather than me. And I mean, that's to be honest. But you know, one of the things we did in our action plan is we stopped talking about Rotarians and we started talking about participants. And that's critical to us. You know, I often use the image of Target stores when I talk about membership. And you know, a Target has concentric circles. At the core are the zealots of Rotary like me that I'm not even, necessarily a good model. I've put in way too many hours to Rotary, but just outside of those really hardcore Rotarians are really good Rotarians that attend almost every meeting, that volunteer every time there's a service project. That's the next circle. But there's all these circles of people that have come into contact to Rotary. And our goal needs to be to keep those people in those concentric circles and to drive them towards the core if possible. And so we have to start looking at Rotaract members as participants in the Rotary experience. We need to start looking at alumni as participants in the Rotary experience. What can we deliver to them as value that will keep them engaged with Rotary? Stop focusing on whether they join the organization or join a club. Focus on delivering value and they will join and they'll become dues paying members. And if they don't, maybe they'll attend our events. Maybe they'll promote Rotary. Maybe they'll talk more about our product. And you know, whether you're dealing with that individual who's going to a Marriott once a year or going to a Marriott 15 times a year, that's still a customer that you want. And that's what we need to start doing. And so clubs, to a large extent, don't just focus on the people that are in your room. Focus on all those people you're touching and keep focusing on them. Grab their contact information. Keep inviting them to events. Highlight them. You continue to engage them and they will stay and they will grow in their Rotary experience. And that's a huge piece of what we're trying to talk about in terms of the future of Rotary.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you, Tom. One last question before I let you off the hook over here. How is our relationship with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You know, that it's a great relationship, no doubt about it. I mean, the two of them and their foundation, they're the biggest givers to the Rotary that obviously we've ever had. We continually engage with them in conversation, certainly as part of the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. We sit at the table with them. We have been in contact with them in the context of COVID-19. If there is a vaccine that can be delivered to address COVID-19, and it can be delivered in a way that it could be delivered at the same time that we're vaccinating against polio, trust me, we'll be trying to sit at the table. We'll be in the conversation with Gates and working in that direction. We just got a commitment to extend our ongoing relationship of $100 million a year from Gates, provided we bring 50 million to the table. And so the relationship is strong. In fact, there is even a club in Seattle that is engaged in malaria treatment through a partnership with the Gates Foundation. So the relationship doesn't just extend to polio. So it's strong.
Fantastic. Tom, once again, thank you very much for joining us today at our first ever virtual District 7620 District Conference. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom's presentation is now in the handouts file. If you'd like to download that, you can have that over there. You heard him first. You heard him over here. He came up with he had a great quote, increase our impact during a crisis. We are in a crisis. Let's go ahead and increase our impact. Let's make things happen. Let's become fearless leaders. Let's be the change we want to see in the world. Tom, thank you for such an inspirational talk. Loved having you. I loved every single minute of this. We'll definitely talk more offline a little later to make bigger and better things happen next year. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, Tom Thorfinson, Chief Strategic Officer for Rotary International.
Thank you. Good to be with you. Good to see you, Barton. And thanks for the gift, by the way. We really appreciate it. We'll see you all later.
Take care.
Thanks, Tom.
All right. Moving along. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. That was great. I'm sorry if I did not get to your question. We're trying to stay on track with time. Don't want to keep everyone here all night. However, moving forward, youth, a call to action, something District Governor Barton has had as a theme this year. Very dear to him, personally very dear to me as well. Love mentoring the youth and kids. I would love to invite on stage now Matt May, the gentleman who is behind the four-way test speeches and the finalists who put it together to make us be able to see this virtually, see the youth present to us. Without further ado, Matt, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Nomi. This is Matt May. I am the District Four-Way Test Speech Chair. And this is like a little bit of a different year for us. Most of the clubs that participate in the four-way test program were kind of coming down the home stretch right when the COVID virus, came out and shut everything down in kind of mid-March, okay? Right before the pandemic shut down the schools. So therefore, we really had to scramble to try to put this together on a virtual basis as the world has become increasingly virtual as opposed to in person. It really took a lot of help, as I am not a technology guy. Luckily, I have a couple teenagers here that show me how to use my cell phone and that sort of thing. But luckily, we had a lot of help from the district, and in particular, I'd really like to thank Temra Akonsky for her tireless efforts in terms of helping getting this thing going, as well as Ashley Waters for getting the logistics in terms of allowing us to engage in this virtually. And there was a lot of new ideas that came out, that I had never thought of. So for instance, I'll just touch on a few. One of which, a couple of them, were that we actually put on some videos. I put one on about how to properly judge a four-way test, because a lot of people will, get the handout and they won't really know how to go through and do the judging. We also had last year's winner. She presented a video for the participants in terms of how to prepare a speech that the kids could go and just click on and watch. And then there was really some outside the box, types of things that also occurred. which is we also aligned a number of the candidates this year with mentors that would actually help them with their speeches and prepare for them. Something very, very different, you know. So I know that Tom had mentioned, you know, how to pivot, and I think that the, you know, four-way test really pivoted quite nicely. And I think a lot of the work that we put in this year, especially, you know, with the videos, the mentorship program, will certainly, you know, serve the four-way test going forward. And I think you guys are in for a real treat tonight. Before we get going with our 4 speeches, I wanted you to be sure you're aware that there's a scoring sheet in the, and Ashley's pulling it up here. There's a scoring sheet, I think that's the upper right-hand corner under the handouts section. I know a lot of times people like to print those out, so as they're going through the 4 finalists, they can, you know, write down and judge each criteria accordingly. So that is in the handouts section of your screen. I know, again, a lot of folks like to have that in front of them, you know, as they score, which we normally do at the district conference. Now, one important thing that I do want you guys to remember as you guys are scoring, and ideally at the end, we would like you guys, everybody here that's, you know, on the presentation, to have a first, second, third, and fourth. Okay, that's what we're looking for, and there'll be some polling at the end where we're gonna get our scoring. Okay. And there's one important thing that I'd like you guys to remember, and that is that one of the criteria is not topic. Okay, so if the candidate, you know, is speaking, you know, to something that you either vehemently agree or disagree with, please do not overweight or underweight that. Okay, because topic is not part of the criteria. Okay, so with that, I am going to I'm going to introduce the first of our candidates. And with that, I would like to introduce Ashlyn Murray. Ashlyn.
Good evening, Rotarians. If you have a phone with the Uber app on it, would you please put it on the desk in front of you? You'll see why at the end. Oh, be there in 10. I'll just order an Uber. Uber might seem like an ideal way to get around. You can get a ride anywhere with just the click on a screen. Although it sounds great on paper, many do not truly understand what it's like in the real world. Uber is a relatively new driving service that allows for anyone with an Uber app to request a ride and be brought to their destination. Unlike taxi drivers, Uber drivers use their own cars and pay for their own gas. The company draws in the younger generations because of the Uber app, where all payments, orders, and cancellations of an Uber can be done within just a few minutes. All of these details sound great, but what is Uber really like? Should I get in the car with a stranger, or should I just ask my father for a ride? By using the 4-way Rotary test, I am able to decide if I should actually order an Uber when I need a ride. I have to ask myself, is it the truth? According to Uber, it's as easy as 5 steps. Create an account on the Uber app using an email address and phone number, enter your destination, meet your driver on the map, check your ride to see if you're getting into the right car with the right driver, and then sit back and relax. Uber sounds convincing, but is it the truth that riding in an Uber is safe? Uber claims that by matching the license plate, car make and model, and the photo of the driver, one will be safe. However, many real-life scenarios prove otherwise. In order to be a driver, all you need is a car that is less than 10 years old and a clean driving record. Conversely, Uber's biggest competitors, taxicab businesses, have very specific standards to meet in order to become a driver. For example, according to Los Angeles Department of Transportation, San Francisco and Los Angeles have requirements for taxi drivers as follows. He or she must speak English, be healthy and maintain hygiene, have no criminal record, have fingerprints on file, U.S. residency, complete a taxi driving course, pass a nationwide FBI criminal background check, and lastly, possess a valid driver's license. Uber has its perks, but there sure are plenty of drawbacks. As I stand on the sidewalk trying to figure out an ethical solution, I ask myself, is it fair? For passengers, Uber rides are usually cheaper than cabs, and for drivers, it's a great way to make some extra cash. It's an easy way to get from point A to point B without having to bug a family member or a friend. Although the idea may be fair, the driving service's safety is not. Many passengers and drivers have found their safety at risk because of DUIs, traffic fatalities, or even sexual abuse. According to the New York Times, Uber said that 6,000 sexual assaults were reported in United States rides in 2017 and 2018, but only 30 cases of sexual assaults and deaths were reported in the taxicab industry. That is not fair. I find myself confused because is the advent of Uber fair to the taxicab industry with respect to driver requirements? Uber has undoubtedly negatively impacted the taxi industry by offering lower prices, faster and better quality service, and a higher degree of transparency in terms of choosing drivers and determining fares. However, the taxicab industry still brings more safety to their passengers because the cab companies own and maintain the vehicles. Although Uber may be fair in regard to the cost of the ride, Uber is not fair in regard to the safety of the passengers or to their competitor, the taxicab industry. I also wonder, will riding on Uber build goodwill and better friendships, as Uber claims? Well, it sounds good, but safety is an issue. For example, Roberto Chicas, a passenger with Uber, was attacked by his driver with a brick when Chicas told his driver that he had taken a wrong turn. Scary, right? Get this, 2 years later, Jason Dalton, an Uber driver, went on a shooting spree in Kalamazoo, shooting 6 passengers at different times. This doesn't sound very friendly to me. After that, would you get in the car with a stranger? Would you want to be friends with your Uber driver? With that being said, is riding in an Uber beneficial to all concerned? Probably not for their drivers because they are not offered workers' compensation. These drivers are financially responsible for gas and vehicle maintenance, as well as struggling to be insured. When Uber was originally started, word spread that it was a great way to earn some extra cash. As Uber has grown, the payment for each ride has decreased. According to Uber, drivers make roughly $25 per hour. After the deduction of gas, insurance, and vehicle maintenance, drivers are usually left with about $10 per hour. That is not enough, especially with the risk of assault, death, and violence. For example, just last year, Uber driver Joseph McVeigh was placed in a medically induced coma after suffering a heart attack. According to CBS 13, passenger Cedric Jeter attacked McVeigh with a knife. How is that beneficial for either person? I do not want to get in the car with a stranger. I do not want to put myself at risk. I do not want the uncertainty of riding in an Uber. After applying the 4-way Rotary test, I am able to conclude that Uber is not an ethical decision. Uber is not fair relative to the safety of its passengers. It will not build goodwill or better friendships. And lastly, it is definitely not beneficial for all concerned. And you know what? I'll just call my dad. And why don't I just delete the app? You know how I asked you to take out your phones in the beginning? Will you delete your app too? Thank you.
All right, so we'll give everybody just a minute or two to go ahead and gather their thoughts as they score Ashlyn's presentation. That was excellent, Ashlyn. And I think it's a bad time to tell you that my side gig is actually driving an Uber. I'm just kidding. But anyway, we'll give everybody another couple minutes here and we'll move on to our next speaker. Okay. So with that, hopefully everybody's wrapped up. And our next speaker is going to be Benjamin Alt. Benjamin.
Thank you. On May 25th, an African-American man named George Floyd was killed by a white police officer in Minneapolis. Over the past few years, similar killings have occurred across the nation, often sparking riots, racially charged debates, and confusion. These shocking acts of violence have quickly shed light upon the deep racial divide within this nation. Even 50 years after the civil rights movement, people are still unable to accept those with a different race as their brother, sister, or neighbor. But what if we were to acknowledge the ugly history of our racially divided country and seek to accept others as humans just like us? Such racial reconciliation would certainly take great time and effort, but it would address this country's need for racial unity and peace. To determine the value and necessity of such racial reconciliation, we can apply the Rotary Club's four-way test to this potential future. First, is it the truth? Is it true that racial division is a present reality and that racial reconciliation is necessary? It could not be more clear that racial division is a real and destructive issue. Look at the hatred, slander, and violence from any party following recent racially charged events. The riots in Ferguson and Baltimore, the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, the white supremacists in Charlottesville, and the list goes on and on. Racial division is a horrible reality of this country. However, racial reconciliation has the potential to become our new truth. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did not speak in vain when he said, "I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." Racial reconciliation has proven victorious over slavery and segregation, and it will continue to win over current obstacles. Second, is it fair to all concerned? Currently, racial gaps are present in terms of income, educational achievement, incarceration rates, and so much more. Racial division is unfair. However, racial reconciliation embodies fairness. When we embrace each other and build one another up based on our inherent value as humans, these racial disparities will disappear. Already examples of such fairness are appearing throughout this country, such as at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. As a school consisting of 85% Caucasian students in 1988, the university launched a program specifically designed to cultivate diversity in education. Today, the school has produced more African American PhD and MD students than any other institution. This serves as a prime example of how racial reconciliation produces fairness to all concerned. Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Daryl Davis is an African American musician who ever since age 10 was nagged by a question which he addressed to racists. "Why do you hate me, even though you don't know me?" Such a question led him to a meeting with Roger Kelly, the former imperial wizard of the Maryland KKK. Following a tense first encounter, Davis began to regularly meet with Kelly, show him hospitality, and even witness many KKK practices. The two ultimately became such close friends that Kelly even renounced the KKK. Soon followed over 50 other members who had also become friends with Daryl Davis. Because such actions of racial reconciliation pursue cross-racial relationships, we can confidently assert the goodwill and better friendships that they will bring. And finally, is it beneficial to all concerned? Former President Barack Obama said, "The danger will come if we idly stand by as America becomes increasingly unequal, an inequality which tracks racial lines and therefore feeds racial strife and which neither our democracy nor our economy can long withstand." Racial division is destructive. It ruins relationships, removes opportunities, and subverts the unity that this country was founded upon. But unlike racial injustice, which elevates one race by degrading another, racial reconciliation seeks the well-being of all racial groups. When we combine our efforts as equals in this country, we will be able to overcome things such as incarceration, unemployment, barriers to education, and racial targeting. Instead, we will be able to accomplish economic success, cultural richness, and an endless number of other possibilities. Truly, racial reconciliation is beneficial to all concerned. Through this four-way test, we can know first and foremost that racial reconciliation is the truth. Racial division may be a present and painful reality, but racial reconciliation serves as our future. Second, racial reconciliation is fair to all concerned. Without it, human worth and justice are neglected. Third, it will certainly build goodwill and better friendships by removing barriers for people to become better friends, neighbors, brothers, and sisters with those of a different race. And finally, racial reconciliation is beneficial to all concerned by uniting all racial groups in the pursuit of success. Through this four-way test, even in the midst of tragic racial division, we can know the immense value and promise of racial reconciliation. Thank you.
I'm sorry, at the end, just so you guys are aware, we are going to show you how to submit your scores and that sort of thing, so you don't have to submit them right now. It'll occur at the end. And again, we're looking for first through fourth, you know, in terms of your rankings. And again, let me just make sure that you guys are, you know, all, you know, where we are. The first speaker was, again, Ashlyn Murray, and her discussion was regarding Uber and that sort of thing. The second speaker was Benjamin Alt, and his discussion was regarding racial reconciliation. So again, oftentimes I know that as I'm trying to go first through fourth, I tend to remember the subjects of the speeches versus the names and that sort of thing. So again, I'm going to give everybody just a minute here, you know, to kind of, if you're using the scoring sheet, which again is up in the upper right hand corner of your screen, it's you know, it's under the notes tab, or where the paper is. You know, again, just give you guys some time to gather your thoughts. Usually when we do this, we're in a big room where there's a lot of people and there's a little bit of chatter and talking and that sort of thing. So I always like to give, you know, a few minutes between each speech so that everybody can grade accordingly. Give everybody just one more minute here. So again, as I was listening to Mr. Thornfinson talk about pivoting, I know that you know, this year with the four-way test, we had to do a big pivot to make sure that this is all online, and I'm very pleasantly surprised with how this is going. I think this is going great. So let me give some thanks again to the district, you know, district team for being able to put this together, especially Ashley Waters, who is running this on the virtual side. You guys are doing a great job. All right. So with that, I'm going to introduce our third contestant. I'm going to introduce Rio Barron. So Rio, you are up.
Consider this scenario. It's a hot Saturday at the park. I'm 4 years old. I've been looking forward to one thing all day, and now I hear the noise that tells me I'm about to get it. It starts off in the distance, and then the melody approaches. The beat is only slightly faster than my racing heart. I prepare for the oncoming ice cream truck. It's here, I tell myself. You have plenty of time. You just need to go now. So I jump off the seesaw and furiously begin running towards it. I've left my parents and my brother in the dust. I am focused. But the more I run, the further the truck seems. Bigger kids begin to pass me. The cheery melody taunts me. I panic. It's too far, unattainable. I collapse limb by limb until I am a puddle on the asphalt. My selfish ambition, chasing alone after a lofty goal, led me to collapse in despair. Ambition, is it good or bad? As a high schooler, I have perfect authority to answer this question. I attended good school with great teachers and many eager students. We study SAT vocab, race from club to club, and we eat scholarship forms for breakfast. Though I give this speech considering your scholarship, I hope I don't sound like a hypocrite when I argue now that selfish ambition makes our goals more difficult to achieve and our accomplishments less satisfying. When we make selfish goals, we do not meet the criteria of the Rotary 4-way test. I'll begin with the first criteria, truth. That we must form goals that are focused on the group rather than the individual is true as evinced by our evolutionary and social history. Humans have survived through time because we trust and cooperate. We are born into this world needing others. Babies need their mothers to survive. Our lives depend on our culture and our community. We are not individual warriors fighting off anyone who approaches our territory, like a high schooler striving to become president of a club, say. We do not normally live on our own islands in isolation, hunting, scavenging, building, protecting, like a high schooler amassing extracurriculars or a shopper amassing toilet paper, say. Our evolution necessitates cooperation. Many religions are founded upon ideas of selflessness. Serving a higher being or cause helps us find value in our lives. During this coronavirus pandemic, we are realizing a need for cooperation and feeling the sadness that existing without our group brings. Those who form goals with common purpose will have a better chance of survival and likely will find more happiness. This is true. Now, on to the second criteria of the Rotary 4-way test, fairness. I recently attended a Model UN conference with high-achieving high schoolers from around the world. I was on the Sustainable Tourism Committee representing Ecuador. The simulation resolution that would, in theory, work. The closest we can get to fairness, to equity, which the world is so desperately searching for right now, and to passing the second criteria of the Rotary 4-way test is acting in the interest of the group, not ignoring the needs of others with our selfish ambition. The third criteria of the Rotary 4-way test is goodwill and friendship. Cooperation is the essence of friendship. So after my disheartening Model UN experience, I did not feel inclined to build goodwill and friendship. Ambassadors on the real UN, though, do work to build goodwill and friendship, critical to maintaining international peace. I hope they do not act selfishly, like scared high schoolers whose college admission decisions rely on winning awards. When there are selfless goals, goodwill and friendship can be built, and the Rotary 4-way test third criteria is met. Finally, will focusing our goals outward benefit all concerned? Well, consider again my ice cream scenario. My family, who I had forgotten as I ran, did not feel the benefit of my leaving, nor did the ice cream truck guy who was to lose my service. But because I exist in a family based on a set of communal values which hang on our refrigerator, my family considered my plight. My brother ran ahead with the money, my mom scooped me up off the ground, I got my ice cream, everyone gathered that day got relief from my screaming, and the ice cream truck guy made a sale. The Rotary 4-way test final criteria was met. Now, not every 4-year-old has a mother who will pick them up after a meltdown and still buy them ice cream. So I implore everyone, even high schoolers, to fight the selfish ambition that society tempts us with and strive towards external goals in order to increase the positive good of our planet. When we make selfless goals and ignore selfish ones, we live truth, we are fair, we build goodwill and friendship, and we see benefits to all concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Rio. Appreciate that. Again, that was our third contestant. And just so you guys are all current, the first contestant again was Ashlyn, and she spoke on Uber. The second contestant was Benjamin, and he spoke on racial reconciliation. The third contestant was Rio, and she spoke about ambition. So again, I know that when I judge these things, I know I've said this last time, but when I judge them, I tend to remember the topics versus names. So again, I'll let you guys, I'll gather your thoughts and that sort of thing. I don't know about you, but I always feel like this is the best part of the four-way test is, or I'm sorry, the best part of the district conference is the four-way test, because you really get to see something that, we just recite at our meetings, and you really get to see it for the lens that it's really useful for. When you analyze difficult issues and you apply these four tests, you can really see what kind of very powerful tool it is that we have at our disposal. So again, I'm going to give you guys just a minute or two, gather your thoughts, let you come up with some notes about the presentations, what you liked, what you didn't like, that sort of thing, before we go on to our fourth and final contestant. And again, the whole point here is to try to distill it down to who you feel like is the first versus the second versus the third versus the fourth in your mind. And the tallying will occur after all four speakers are complete. And then, okay, so I'm just going to give everybody another minute or two as everybody's piecing together their scoring. I'll assume that's enough time for everybody. Okay, and so with that, I'd like to introduce our fourth contestant, whose name is Sai Harshini Badaju.
Hi, Sai, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. In the beginning of 9th grade, for the very first time, an essay I wrote in my English class was graded based on the 9-point AP scale. My teacher graded it, she handed it back, and I saw that I got an exceptional 3 out of 9. Fortunately, this was just a practice assignment, and our teacher just wanted us to get used to the AP format. But imagine if my teacher took this one bad score of mine and from then on viewed me as incompetent. This one score cannot define who I truly am as a student. Yet every school year, millions of students across the nation have to take several standardized tests. And then these test results are used to evaluate both them as students and their teachers. Should this be the system in place? Today, I'll be using the Rotary four-way test to determine if standardized testing in schools is truly the best tool to evaluate both students and schools. The first question to ask is it the truth that standardized tests such as PARCC, MAP, and NISA are used to evaluate students and schools? Since 2002, when the No Child Left Behind Act was signed, students, teachers, and schools have been graded based on these values, meaning if the results are poor, some of the consequences include students may not be promoted to the next grade level, teachers' salaries could be cut, and the school as a whole may lose funding. Therefore, yes, it is the truth that standardized testing impacts students and schools. However, the problem that arises here is that these very test results do not convey the truth. A study conducted in Michigan State University found that between 50 to 80% of the material on these standardized tests were not covered in detail in textbooks used in schools. In other words, these results are not reliable because students are being tested on material they simply were not taught. Considering the second question in the four-way test, how would these tests be fair then if they don't match with the school curriculum? It's likely students will end up with a poor result. But people will jump to the conclusion that, oh, this student, he's not proficient, and his teachers and school must be ineffective as well, because based on his test results, they aren't educating him properly. It is not fair to all concerned that a subjective test result can dictate how a student's potential is determined. It is not fair for the teachers who are doing their job by following the school curriculum, yet what their students are being tested on doesn't correlate with what they're learning in the classroom. It's not fair that the entire school is judged based on a value that doesn't reflect its true quality of education. And though this system is not fair to anybody, schools feel pressured to comply with standardized testing because of the possible consequences if they don't. To avoid getting low results, teachers may resort to a method known as teaching to the test, where they only teach those concepts students will be evaluated on. Will doing this build goodwill and better friendships? The purpose of going to school should not solely be to prepare someone to do well on an exam. Robert Sternberg, a psychology professor from Cornell University, explains that teaching to the test really only develops memorization and some partial analytical skills. But in order for students to build goodwill and better friendships in their future, we need to first learn creativity, communication, adaptability, perseverance, and much more while we're still in school. Teaching simply for the sake of passing a standardized test stripped students of this opportunity to grow as individuals. And the final question to ask is standardized testing beneficial to all concerned? Robert Schafford from Fairtest, which is an American educational organization, explains that because standardized testing is typically formatted as quick answered multiple choice questions, the results do not convey how a student learns or thinks. In order for a teacher to truly help their student learn, they would have to understand how their student personally learns best, because that way the teacher can use the correct resources and methods to teach them most effectively. Standardized testing is not beneficial for teachers to understand their students' needs, and so it's not beneficial for students to actually improve. Since the answer has been a conclusive no for each of the four-way test questions, it's clear that standardized testing is not what we should be using to evaluate both students and schools. The results do not convey the truth of what a student knows, so it would be unfair to evaluate them based on this. When schools feel pressured to focus on a few subjects, students struggle to develop qualities that they need in their futures to build goodwill. And in the end, the results are not beneficial to actually promote improvement. In the beginning of 9th grade, I might have done horribly on an essay, but I'm really glad that my teacher did not consider this one score as the limit to my potential. Thank you.
So that was excellent. Again, let me just go through the 4 speeches that you just heard. Again, to start out, we had Ashlyn Murray, who spoke, about Uber. Second, we had Benjamin Alt, who spoke about racial reconciliation. Third, we had Rio Barron, who spoke about ambition. And then fourth, we had Sai, who spoke about standardized testing. And again, what we're looking for everybody on this gathering to do is to, again, list first, second, third, fourth in your mind in terms of, put it down on a piece of paper, in terms of who you thought was first, second, third, and fourth, and then we'll be gathering that in just a second. While you guys are formulating your thoughts during Sai's speech, I couldn't help but think, my oldest daughter is 16, and she was taking a very difficult AP chemistry test but because of all the coronavirus, it, you know, everything got all screwy, you know, like it is now. So she had to take it online. And she was one of the millions of AP test kids whose things didn't upload. And, you know, her whole year, she was just kind of going right for this one test. And then the whole AP system kind of blew up. And she was kind of in tears behind that. So I do know that, you know, the standardized tests, especially when you're focusing on that one score, you know, it's a real pressure cooker. So I was thinking about that as Cy was talking. So again, if everybody could, you know, again, get their first, second, third, fourth place, you know, kind of in front of them in terms of, you know, what they think. And again, let me go through those again. The first speaker was Ashlyn Murray. She spoke about Uber. The second speaker was Benjamin Alt, and he spoke about racial reconciliation. The third speaker was Rio Barron. She spoke about ambition. And the fourth speaker was Cy, and she spoke about standardized testing. So again, if you guys could get all your scores in order, that would be great. And I think that just before I go, I think that we are very blessed, you know, as a district and as a, you know, as a convention to have, you know, again, the youth really utilize this powerful tool that we just kind of take for granted in Rotary, known as the four-way test. And I really think it's excellent when you get to see that in action and applied to, you know, very serious issues. So with that, I'll turn things over to Domi, if that's okay.
Thank you so much, Matt. And students, wow, I am impressed. That was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you, everyone, for your amazing speeches. It truly showed how the four-way test can be applied to everyday facets of life. This is going to be a very, very difficult score for all the people scoring out there. Look on the screen, bit.ly/four-way test. Type that into your browser. You can submit your scores over there. Go to the chat box. You can click on the link in the chat box as well. Ashley has put it up over there. Begin scoring once again. That was very thoughtful, very inspiring. Thank you so much. Big, huge round of applause to all four of the students and to Matt to be able to pull this off. We're going to go ahead and give you all some time to get your scores submitted in and take a little bit of a break. For those of us who need a bite to eat, get another glass of wine, have some more scotch because you can't listen to me talk anymore. I get it, no problem, go for it. We're going to take about a 10-minute break and then reconvene back over here. Once again, vote now, bit.ly/four-way test. Type that into your browser or go to the chat box and click on the full link and submit your votes now. Thank you all, and I will see you shortly. Right after the break, I will be bringing up Jennifer Hara, our very own from District 7620, who will be talking about the Global Scholars Program. Thank you, guys.
Ashley?
All right, about a minute or so to wrap up with our break, and then we will go ahead and get started. Rotarians, guests, and family, welcome back to the first ever virtual district conference of 7620. Welcome back from the break. I hope you all got stretched out, got your votes in for these phenomenal speeches by the students. We are ready to hear the winners. I know I'm ready. Are you ready? You all voted for them. The students are standing by. They want to know how we felt on how they did. It was very, very difficult to judge, to see. However, at this time, I would like to, well, before I invite Matt back, I do want to say, you know, we're up here, you see us, it looks like we're doing a lot of work, you know, sitting in our suit. It's not really us. I didn't do anything besides read a few pieces of paper. The real heroes are behind stage. And I want to give a huge shout out once again to Ashley Waters, who's back there controlling this whole conference, who digitally, technically has made this possible. The scoring sheets, the webinar, etc. She's done a phenomenal job. And for Jennifer Coppett to putting this stuff together, and putting all this transitioning and whatnot, and giving the scripts, and it's beyond amazing, right? In a time of a crisis, you make a difference. This is what they're doing. They're making a difference. They saw Barton's vision and they're doing it. So thank you both very much, and everyone else who's behind the scenes for doing such a wonderful job. Now, I'm gonna bring us back over to Matt May. Matt, come online. Let's go ahead and see who the winners were for our four-way test.
Okay, I should be back online. Can you hear me, Nomi? Is that good? You got me?
Yep.
Okay, good.
I got you.
All right, just wanted to make sure. So before I announce the winners, I'd actually like for all the contestants to please pop on the screen if you could. You do that by clicking your camera and then unmuting yourself. So if all four of you could pop on, I'd like just to have you guys tell us like a little bit more about yourselves as opposed to just, you know, what your speeches are. So I'm just going to do it in the order that I see you guys on my screen. Okay. So Rio, let's start with you. Okay. If that's okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what grade are you in, where you go to high school, and what Rotary Club sponsored you for this?
Yeah. So I'm in 11th grade. I go to Urbana High School. I'm part of an IB program there. And I am sponsored by the Rotary Club of Frederick.
Oh, Rotary Club of Frederick. That's excellent. That's excellent. Okay, so you're going to be in your senior year this year, is that correct?
Yes.
That's awesome. Are you starting to look at colleges and that sort of thing? Where are you looking?
Yeah, I'm looking pretty much anywhere that I can find online. I'm looking for like a liberal arts college or a research university, but other than that, I don't really have that many limitations. So the main struggle is narrowing it down.
Absolutely. 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 So, Sai, do you mind if I ask you a few questions? Is that okay?
Yep.
Is that all right? All right.
Yep.
So can you tell me what grade you're in, where do you go to high school, and what Rotary Club sponsored you by chance?
I'm a sophomore at Mount Hebron High School, and the Ellicott City Rotary Club sponsored me.
Ellicott City? Okay. And you said you're senior, is that correct? Or
No,
I'm sorry.
sophomore.
Sophomore. My apologies. Okay. Excellent. And was there anything? I'll toss this up to both Rio and Sai to chime in. Did you find that utilizing the four-way test was a pretty powerful tool in terms of answering, you know, your questions or in terms of analyzing the issues, you know, or the topics that you guys discussed? Did you find it to be a powerful tool, or yeah?
Yeah, I didn't know about it before I started writing my speech, but I realized once I started writing and like thinking about it that it actually fit really well with pretty much any idea I thought of, and especially the one I chose.
Yeah.
Yeah, adding on to that, I was always passionate about this topic, and then once I applied the Rotary four-way test, I realized how deep the problem was. So I'm really thankful to knowing about this test, to uncovering like the real situation here.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people just read it and they think, oh, it's just kind of an expanded golden rule or something like that. But then when you actually start applying it, it gets to be very powerful. So Ashlyn, you're in the middle there. What grade are you in?
I am in 11th grade, so I'm a rising senior.
You're a rising senior. And where do you go to high school?
I go to Severn School in Severna Park.
Nice, nice, nice. So I assume, are you with the Lakeshore Rotary? Is that who sponsored you?
Severna Park Rotary.
Ah, Severna Park Rotary. My apologies, my apologies. And so are you looking at colleges coming up?
I am. I'm actually looking more towards the service academy, so all the military academies.
Oh, really? Nice, nice, nice. So are you leaning towards West Point or Naval Academy or Air Force Academy or any of the above, Coast Guard? Any of
Right
them?
now, I'm actually looking towards West Point and Coast Guard, and I'm looking forward to possibly playing lacrosse there as well.
Nice, nice, nice. So trying to get it out of the Annapolis area, but you'll stay home if the tuition's free, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. And then, do you have any comments in terms of utilizing the four-way test? Did you find it to be fairly like a very powerful tool when you got going?
Oh, definitely. So I actually found it very helpful because for my topic with Ubering, a lot of my friends, it's a very common thing for everyone to do, but there's lots of bad things that can happen. So after sitting down and writing the speech and actually learning more about the Rotarians' way of thinking, it was super helpful. And I think I might have shifted some of my friends' opinions too.
Good, 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 good. All right, so Ben, you're the only male on there here outside of me. So just a quick question. What grade are you in?
I'm a senior.
You're a senior. Nice. And where do you go to high school, bud?
Rockbridge Academy.
Rockbridge Academy. Where exactly is Rockbridge Academy located?
It's in Millersville, Crownsville.
Millersville? Excellent, excellent, excellent. And what Rotary Club sponsored you?
I actually don't know.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, was it the Annapolis Club maybe? Does that sound familiar? Okay, I think it's Annapolis that works with Rockbridge. And then where are you going to school next year? Are you going to college next year?
Yes, I'm going to UMBC.
Oh, nice, 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 nice. And then what did you think about utilizing the four-way test? Did you find it to be a pretty powerful lens?
Yeah, in fact, the topic I had chosen, I had explored significantly, but I think the test really helped me to clarify my thoughts and really organize it in a way that the other speeches haven't. So I thought it was really helpful.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Yeah, we as Rotarians, we use it as our ethical test. And again, we get together at meetings and then just kind of say it, repeat the four questions usually at the beginning or at the end of a meeting. And I can tell you, I've been in Rotary for coming up on about 25 years now, and it's really very powerful when you start getting into these questions that come up into your life that aren't necessarily yes or no or black or white, but are more like a shade of gray. They really kind of help you navigate, all right, what are the pros and cons, and who am I going to affect, and is this true, and that sort of thing. It's a very, very powerful tool that I hope that you guys use going forward. So, all right. So with that, we do have the results, and I will say before I give the results, all four of you did an excellent job. Normally in a non-coronavirus world, you guys are standing in front of a couple hundred Rotarians and they are all cheering and applauding loudly. So with that, I'm going to give you guys applause. You guys can't hear the rest of my cohorts doing that on the screen. But again, all four of you did excellent. And just so the Rotary, the Rotarians are aware, this was culled down from a field of about close to 20 contestants down to 10, and then these are the four that proceeded from the 10, that were at the second heat. So with that, let me go. I'll just kind of announce the winners first through fourth, if that's okay. In first place was Ashlyn Murray. In second place was Sai Harshini Badagu. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yeah, you are.
I am? Okay, thank God. I'm sorry. In third place was Rio Barron. And then in fourth place was Benjamin Ault. So again, you guys did excellent. All of you did excellent. They were great speeches, and we really appreciate you working with us, with the technology and this, this weird world that we live in. Because again, normally you're in a big room with lots of people. You can see faces, see expressions, as opposed to just staring into a cell phone or a laptop or whatever it is you guys are doing right now. And again, I just want to thank all of you for doing an excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations again. All right, so with that, I am going to turn things back over to you, Nomi, if that's okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Matt. Rio, Sai, Ashlyn, Ben, congratulations. Absolutely hearty congratulations on a job very well done to all four of you. Thank you. Another huge round of applause for you guys. Thank you. Matt, thank you very much for leading our district into making this happen in a virtual world. And Tamara, I know she's been helping you. She's done a lot as well. Thank you very much. Your district greatly appreciates your dedication. This year's Rotary theme, as we know, was Rotary Connects the World. And there is no better program in Rotary that connects the world more than a Global Scholars Program. While many Rotarians do not have the opportunity to be involved with this program, like other Rotary offerings, we are blessed as a district with our proximity to Washington, D.C. At this time, I'd like to introduce our district Global Scholar Chairperson, Jennifer Hara. Please welcome Jennifer.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Nomi, for that. I know many of you know me as I've been involved with the district for a bit. I'm a past president of the Washington, D.C. Rotary Club and a past area governor, and I have the honor and privilege of taking over for our district governor-elect, Jimmy Gorski, as the District Global Grant Scholarship Committee Chair last year. So this was my second year running the committee. What we are going to do for the next sort of 30 minutes is have a short panel discussion with two of the scholars that are have been honored with having received a Global Grant Scholarship. We will allow some time at the end of the discussion. I'm going to ask the panelists some questions, and there will be time for questions from the audience. Additionally, I should mention that Ashley and the team have posted the presentation that I commandeered from Jimmy. I'm not sure if she put it together, she took it from the chair before her, that has a lot of the programmatic and process information in terms of how your club can potentially submit an applicant for the annual Global Grant Scholarship that is awarded every year by the district. It is also available in the handout section on WebEx, so if you want to take a look at that later on, please feel free to do so. There's a lot of really great information in there, and obviously this was something I was hoping to be able to share with folks at the district leadership training that we also were not able to have in person. So it is my honor and privilege to introduce the two scholars that we have with us this evening, and again to thank them for giving up their Friday evening to spend it with all of us. The first scholar that we have with us is an inbound scholar, so it's an individual that is here with us studying at an institution in the Washington, D.C. area. This is Dr. Satoshi Yamashita. He has been sponsored as an inbound student by the Rotary Club of Kyoto, Rakuhoku of Japan, and he will give a short introduction about himself. And the second is our outbound scholar for this Rotary year, Miss Aminata Sek. She is sponsored by the Rotary Club of Capitol Hill. I was going to also ask our current outbound scholar that is studying right now in Oxford, England, but it's 1:30 in the morning. in the UK, and so I thought it would be nice if we did not ask her to participate in this program. So Ashley, I'm assuming we'll be able to see Dr. Satoshi and Sek. There's Dr. Satoshi. Okay. Dr. Satoshi, do you just want to spend a couple minutes and introduce yourself?
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So, hello everyone. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm Satoshi Yamashita from Japan. I'm working as a postdoctoral researcher at Children's National Neuroscience Research. In Japan, I'm working as a pediatrician. First of all, I really appreciate all help with Rotary, the US, and Japan in these difficult times with coronavirus. I'm studying in the US with a lot of kind support. So as we know, I'm supported by District 7620 Rotary Club of Washington, D.C. and District 2650 Rotary Club of Kyoto Rock Fork. So from now, I'd like to have my self-introduction for about 3 minutes. So first, I talk about what made me a pediatrician. It's my younger brother who has brain disease and his chief pediatrician, Dr. Tamamoto. I grew up with my brother and admired Dr. Tamamoto. So I decided to try to be a pediatrician like him. So fortunately, I got an MD degree in 2005. So second, I talk about what made me study neuroscience. It's my patient with severe brain disease and new IPS technology. I worked as a pediatrician and I met him. I treated him, but I could do almost nothing about his symptom. In 2013, I got a chance to study him with new IPS technology. He and his father kindly gave us their skin to make iPS cells. We made brain cells from their iPS cells, and we found a part of disease mechanisms. I got a PhD degree in 2016. So finally, I talk about what made me study in the US. It's Rotary and Children's National Neuroscience Research. Throughout my PhD research, I wanted to develop my research skill in an international scale. I found the Children's National Neuroscience Research, but the grant was required. And then I met Rotary, and you all are supporting me and my family. Now I'm here. I'm working on child brain disease with a lot of tools such as iPS cells, NMODs, and gene technologies. I'd like to study in the US as much as possible. This is my story. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Satoshi. Right, so part of the reason why I selected Dr. Satoshi as the inbound scholar to speak to you is because he's a bit of a different type of scholar, right? He is already a full-fledged doctor, a pediatrician back in Japan, and his scholarship is to do research at National Children's Hospital here in Washington. So it's the Global Grant Scholarship Program is for more than just a graduate degree, as long as it is supporting one of the 6 areas of Rotary's focus. So I'll turn it now over to Aminata to give her introduction.
Thank you, Jennifer. I hope everyone can hear me okay.
Yes.
Having a bit of technical difficulties momentarily. That is a very tough act to follow, but I will do my best. My name is Aminata Sek. I am originally from Dakar, Senegal, and have been living in DC for about 9.5 years now. I currently work at Comonix International, which is a firm that does international development consulting for primarily the US Agency for International Development, but also partners and implements programming for the US State Department as well as the UK Agency for International Development. So when I moved to DC, I attended American University for 3.5 years. I got my degree not in neuroscience, but in international development with a minor in international business and a focus in sub-Saharan Africa. And as someone who's from West Africa, I've always had an interest and passion for being able to work on the continent, specifically in Francophone West Africa, and be able to give back to a community that I feel like has given me so much and really given me a perspective and a culture that I carry with me every single day. So when I got to Chemonics in 2015, I first started working on a split portfolio between our peace, stability, and transition practice and our business development team. And since then, I got the opportunity to focus a lot on peace, stability, and transition, specifically doing work on countering violent extremism in places in the Sahel. So that was like Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad, but also really got the opportunity to branch out into a lot of other sectors, including economic growth and trade and agriculture and education work. And for me, that was such an enriching experience, just being able to see how interconnected all of these fields are. And I think working in international development, we often, just kind of silo things in ways that it's really inorganic to do, because you can't talk about education without talking about clean water access for people. And having the perspective of being able to work in these different fields and speak with people both on the ground, but also learn from experts here in DC has been something that I have really appreciated over the years. And as I got more and more familiar with that work, I actually was working with a colleague and a good friend of mine now, Jacqueline Grace, who was, as Jennifer mentioned, our scholar from last year, who is currently studying in Oxford. And she started telling me about the Rotary International group. And it was a group that in a community I'd heard a lot about just tangentially. And it became one of those things where once somebody puts it on your radar officially, you see it everywhere. And I realized a lot of people in my immediate circle were actually involved with different Rotary clubs. And she told me about the 4-way test that I heard some of the contestants speaking about just before we got on the screen. And it made a lot of sense for me. And I was able to connect with Diane Reish of the Rotary Club of Capitol Hill and meet some of the members and folks up on that team. And since then, it was kind of a no-brainer. And I did throw my hat in for the Global Grant Scholarship and ended up being selected. But I think, even if things had gone differently, I'm just very grateful to have had the opportunity to meet everybody that I did at the Rotary Club of Capitol Hill, meet other members of the different Rotary clubs in DC, and then really appreciated that it is about serving your community. And that idea of community is not just, where you are domestically or at any given moment, but if you're traveling somewhere new, there's always somebody to host you and somebody who's looking out for you. And that's something that really resonated with me as somebody who grew up moving around a lot and had to kind of create a new community, rinse, repeat every 3 or 4 years. So I really benefited from having people who extended that sort of welcome and empathy to me when I moved to new places. And that being such a mainstay of what Rotarians do for one another really meant a lot. And I think is something that I will hope to continue to be able to offer to other people. And also just the aspect of service, I think, is just a resounding theme throughout all of what Rotarians do and what the Rotary International Club does. And something that also spoke to me because that's something that I take very seriously as part of being part of a whole. So I'll leave it at that. I guess I'll add that the most important part perhaps is that I'm supposed to be attending HEC Paris, which was going to be to pursue an MBA in strategy and or organizational development. And that's really to link back what I think is a really clear nexus between work you can do in the economic growth space and countering violent extremism and stability work, which is a very big area of interest for me just because of the part of the world that I'd like to focus on. There is a lot of economic disenfranchisement, there's a lot of marginalization, and it's falling increasingly victim to insurgencies and violent extremism. And I'd love to be able to contribute to kind of countering that narrative and contributing to people's self-determination. So HEC Paris afforded me that ability, and then the Rotary Global Grant Scholarship was going to be a really great way to leapfrog into that and have kind of a landing pad with people that I can already call my community. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Aminata. Well, you answered most of the questions that I was going to ask you, but let me just kind of ask this question, and I know it's hard to tell. There's so many things that are up in the air. But how do you think, and given what you've been able to learn about Rotary and your journey over the last 6 to 9 months in the application process, and speaking quite in depth with the Capitol Hill Club and then our committee, and then I know you've even been a guest speaker for the Capitol Hill Club at one of their meetings. How do you think you'll continue your journey with Rotary after you complete your studies?
So this is actually a very good question, and it's one that was asked when I first met with Diane. It was asked during the Global Grant Scholarship, application process, and I think for me, it's very clear because Rotary, from what I've seen anyway, is a lifelong commitment. A lot of the people that I've gotten the chance to meet were people who've been in the club or a club for 5 years, 10 years, 20, 25, and for me, it was very clear that there's no wrong time to join a Rotary club. So what I'm hoping to do, there are clubs active across West Africa, and I think wherever I land, if there's not a club, I'll probably create a club with someone. But there's really opportunities to just give back to the communities that helped lift you up. Even if I end up, coming back to the DC area, it's very clear to me that there's very active clubs in this area who are contributing to causes that I care about. So for me, it's less about, having a pin or being able to wave the flag, but I think so long as you're continuing to embody the values that Rotary is really about and believes in and tries to espouse, then you can say that you're carrying on that mission. And then if and when you get to a point that, you're able to integrate an official club, if there's one that exists near you, then all the better. But just, not knowing what things are going to be in 2 years or 3 years or even a year from now, that's kind of how I'm taking it in stride, just because all of my plans keep getting thrown out the window as soon as I make them. So I'm just focusing more on like the existential piece of it, which is, what are you doing to better the lives of those around you?
Excellent. And I know you spoke to this a bit, but you will be studying to get your MBA, hopefully at HEC in Paris. What would be your dream job upon completion of your degree, besides changing the world?
Besides changing the world, oh, small feat. I would love to be able to work with women and youth. So if I am able, and I keep talking about this, but if I am able to go back to Dakar, which is still what I consider, one of my homes in addition to Washington, D.C., and I have a deep affinity for the show Shark Tank. So be able to create a similar platform. I am a competitive person, that's I think why I have an interest in business development. But being able to work with women and youth who, quite frankly, have a ton to offer in Dakar and other places in West Africa, but they don't always get, a seat at the table. They don't always get to be heard, but they have really brilliant ideas. And I've been able to talk to several different community groups or cooperatives in my travels back and forth through West Africa. So being able to give them a platform where it is really focused on their development and their empowerment, and letting them kind of lead that narrative and whatever it may mean to them, because I don't pretend to have the answers to everybody's, dilemmas or struggles or whatever it may be. So being able to be in a position where I can kind of reach back and pull people up with me and let them challenge themselves and make mistakes and take risks and have a safety net, because that's really what encourages innovation and what encourages people to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do, is to have risks, to have safety nets, whether that's, financial safety nets or familial safety nets, and being able to count on people really goes a long way. So that's kind of a long-winded answer. It's a little fluffy, but I don't quite know what that looks like in terms of a title that I can put on LinkedIn. But I know, if I were to wake up every day and say that this job is fulfilling to me, it would be because I'm able to do those things.
Great. Thank you, Aminata. I'm going to turn now to Satoshi-san and have him answer a few questions. Satoshi, so how do you think you'll continue your journey with Rotary after you complete your studies? And what are your future plans after you finish your fellowship?
Okay. So after I completed my studies, I'd like to work on the Rotary's 6 areas of focus with Rotary. They are peace, disease prevention, water, maternal and child health, education and economic and community development. I believe that the good society for child brain disease patients and family satisfies all these 6 areas of focus. So I'd like to join the Rotary activities and share the information each other, and I hope we could make a project for child brain disease. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I do hope, you know, when you do return to Japan and whether you end up back in Kyoto or in a different city, that you do find a Rotary Club to join there and do continue some work. And perhaps through some of the relationships you've established with the clubs here in Washington and in District 7620, we can do a joint project together. That would be wonderful. Couple other questions. So what is the most important thing so far that you have learned through your fellowship at Children's Hospital?
Okay. So the most important thing, it is a big research scale for child disease. So Children's Research Institute has departments for all child disease, including cancer and heart disease. Japan has few such child research institutes. So also, I'm working with other children's hospital researchers, the Boston Children's Hospital and the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I learned how to run the big project with this big research field. Yes, it's the most important thing. Yeah.
Wonderful, that's fantastic. That's good to know you're doing some work with some other hospitals on the Eastern Seaboard. So, and I'm sure you've been asked this question many times, probably by your friends and family back home and probably by some of the Rotarians that you've met and others, but what is the most surprising thing about the United States that you have discovered or learned or observed that you did not know before?
Yes, thank you for the question. The most surprising thing is it is diversity in the US society. So as we know, Japan has almost only Japanese. So in the US, a lot of races are living and a lot of cultures are living, and they make a country. So of course, I knew about the diversity in the US before coming to the US, but the diversity had much more impact on me than I expected. So I saw the diversity with my own eyes, and so I respect the diversity in the US.
Wonderful, Satoshi-san. That's very interesting. It is a pretty big difference between Japan and the United States, I would agree. So Ashley, I don't know if we have any questions from the audience. I know we have probably about 6 or 7 more minutes. We could give our time back to Nomi and we could move forward with the program, or if there are some questions out there, I'm happy to pose them to the panelists or try to answer them myself. Let me just get with the technology here. See if I can do this. Okay, so if someone has asked to both of you, you're both, we'll start off with Dr. Satoshi. Do your families have Rotary connections? Are they Rotarians? If they do have connection, and what do your friends think of your involvement with Rotary? Why don't we start with you, Dr. Satoshi?
Sorry, I couldn't hear clearly, sorry.
Sure, sorry. So the question is, do your families have a Rotary connection? Are they involved in Rotary? Are they actually Rotarians? And then what do your friends think of your involvement with the Rotary Club?
My family?
Yes.
Now? Sorry.
Yes, well, I know you have your wife and your children here with you in Washington.
Yes.
So what about your extended family back in Japan? Are any of them in Rotary?
No, sorry.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I know that women in Rotary has become a new thing in Japan, actually.
Yeah.
I have some history with that, just through a sister city relationship my club has with the Tokyo Club. And I know they only recently started letting women become members in the last couple of years. How about you, Aminata? Any familial connection to Rotary?
I do. So my older sister is actually part of a club in Lausanne, Switzerland, which is where she lives. And she had been involved with some Rotary work here in Silver Spring when she still lived in the US. So I had heard her talking about it like 10 years ago and never really thought anything about it. And then as life would have it, here I am now.
Here you go. Now, and have you been sharing with your friends, your colleagues about your scholarship, and if they've been saying, "What's Rotary? What is that?"
It's funny you should ask because I mentioned it to someone and the first thing they said was, oh, Victoria Cooper, who's our senior vice president for East and Southern Africa, is a Rotarian, and she was very active and started a club in Liberia when she was chief of party there. So this is what I mean by once you know it's a thing, it's everywhere. And a lot of the people who didn't know about it, who I've since spoken to about it, were very interested in getting involved in their own clubs, you know, in Northern Virginia and other parts of the metropolitan area. So they've been very encouraging and also thought it made a lot of sense given what I'm interested in doing and the work I do now.
Right. It's wonderful to see the face of Rotary changing all over the world. Any other questions, Ashley? I don't see any. Well,
Hey, Jennifer.
Yes, yes.
Jennifer, I have a question. Spartan.
Absolutely.
So, I am so grateful to Satoshi and to Aminata for joining us tonight. They are a classic example of the beauty of what Rotary can do as we connect the world, which, as you know, is this year's theme. And we see the diversity of a medical doctor working on brain research for children, and on the other side of the spectrum, if you will, somebody going after an MBA to do good in the world. And this, I hope everybody appreciates the great diversity that Rotary brings, both in its global scholars and it's an effort to do good in the world. Now, Satoshi, I have to inform you, there is one new area of focus. So that was approved by the Rotary International Board yesterday, and that is a focus on the environment. I have no idea whether brain research for children has anything to do with the environment, but I do want you to add that as a 7th area of focus. But to both of you, let me simply say we are deeply grateful. You are true heroes and heroines to all of us in Rotary. You represent how we connect the world, and thank you so much for all the hard work and all that you do for Rotary as you move forward. And to reinforce what Amanata said, I do believe, and Satoshi knows this from being at my home, I do believe that when Rotary is kind enough to give a large $25,000 scholarship to a student, it is your obligation as you move forward in life to try to give back to Rotary as best as you can. And in advance, I thank you for doing that.
Thank you, District Governor Barton. I will now cede the floor back to Nomi for the next part of the program. And thank you all very much. Please feel free to reach out if you have questions. My contact information can be found not only in DACDB, but in the presentation that is in the handout section. Have a good evening. And thank you again,
so
Satoshi
much.
and Aminata.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Satoshi. Thank you, Aminata. Thank you. What an amazing presentation on such a very important program in our district. I certainly learned a great deal of what is involved, and more importantly, its impact on the scholar and our world at large of what's happening. And this is what Rotary is all about. Moving forward, next up, every year at our district conference, we take a moment to remember those we have lost in this past year who are part of Rotary. Typically at the conference, we come together, the lovely ceremony with flowers and club members coming forward to honor their fellow Rotarians. Tonight, we express our thoughts and remembrance through a brief video celebrating our fellow Rotarians and their commitment to service above self. So please take a moment and join me in watching this video. Thank you very much. Thank you for remembering with me. Now, time is here. It is the end of the night of our first day of our District 7620 virtual conference. With that being said, your host for tonight, Nomi, that was me. I'm out of here. I'm going. I'll go get myself fed, take some rest, go take a shower. Phew, we did it. But to close off, I would like to once again personally invite on District Governor Barton Goldenberg. Just real quick, I had the honor to work with Barton this year on the COVID-19 task force. It was absolutely phenomenal. I couldn't be more thankful to working with such a fearless leader who said, just metal to the pedal, let's go and let's make a difference. And we received cards, we received letters, we've received so numerous communication from those people that we touched through our entire district, whose lives we've changed, and that Rotarians and non-Rotarians came together to help serve people under the great leadership of District Governor Barton Goldenberg. So once again, Barton, welcome back. Everybody else, have a good night. Thank you so much. See you bright and early tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Nomi. So, Nomi is just a classic example for me of the beauty of the youth in Rotary. Nomi's less than 35, if my memory serves me well. And he is with Ashley Waters, who's behind the scenes and has done a brilliant job, who's also under 35. And both of them have stepped up to the plate in amazing ways. Both of them are incredibly committed Rotarians doing their own thing. I just am so proud of both of you and all that you do for both our district as well as Rotary International. So Nomi, you did a great job and we're very proud of you. And again, I want to thank Ashley and Jennifer, and tomorrow I'll thank the full committee for pulling off a great virtual conference. Let me make a couple of summarizing points and we'll get you on your way. Number one, I want to go back to what Tom said, Tom Thorfinson. This is the time for pivoting. This is the time for us to focus on how do we retain our members and how do we make sure we keep them engaged, particularly during 2020, 2021. We know that if we can keep them engaged, they'll stay with us over the longer term. I thought there were a couple of interesting points. Literacy, the number one importance for ages 30 to 50. What are your clubs doing in literacy? What is the district doing in literacy? Environment, one of the most important topics for those less than 40 years old, and now a area of focus for Rotary. Are we doing enough in our clubs? Are we doing enough in Rotary to drive that younger than 40 to our clubs to actively participate? And I want to end my big point with Tom on something he said in a very nice way, and it's something that may or may not be feasible for all of us. But he said now would be the time to kick it up a notch for financial giving if you're in a position to do so. And you know that each of the years where we did have a crisis that he showed on the graphs, we did take a hit in our financial models. For those that can afford it, and I'm not suggesting again all that can do it or everyone can do it, please reach into your pocket over the next week or whatever it may be before our Rotary year ends and do your best to give to Rotary. I want to move on to the four-way test. It was brilliant, Matt. And your initial enthusiasm to make it happen and then considerable skepticism, could you make it happen, is natural and normal. And I kept asking Matt to think out of the box. And when he got Tim Rokonsky on the team and also somebody behind the scenes, Marilyn Cruz, who worked with RILA students, there were many of them, they were able together to bring up, I think it was 23 students, Matt. And that then narrowed down to 10 and then back down to 4. Each one of them more precious than the prior. They did a brilliant job, and it forces all of us as adult Rotarians to ask ourselves in the day-to-day lives that we face with our families, with our children, with our spouses, in society, with our business colleagues, etc. Are we applying the four-way test in the best way possible? It's one thing, as I think Matt said, to apply it in a static way as we meet in the mornings or in the afternoons or whatever it may be in our club meetings. It's very different to think about how it applies to life. And it's not always clear. There are some real challenges within the four-way test. One of the funnest things our club does, Metro Bethesda, is we apply the four-way test during one of our club meetings to situations that happen in life, and we kind of see how does it apply or how doesn't it apply. But what I simply want to say to Matt is bravo. You've done a brilliant job, and Temra behind the scenes and others that have helped. I couldn't be more proud of you, and I think you did it, and I'm glad you took the risk, and I think the students were absolutely brilliant. On the Rotary Scholars, I just want to reinforce how impressive Tachi is as a researcher in the area of brain disease for children, and the enthusiasm that Amanita brought in her love for what she called the long-term commitment of Rotary. And you should be proud of yourselves, because as you pay your $70 a year dues, that money will go towards the Global Scholarship. And we thank you for that. And I hope you're as proud of them as I was of myself. It's with deep sorrow that we showed the memorial service. It has to be done because it's the right thing to do. But many of those people on the screen that were shown tonight were very dear and personal friends of mine. And they're wonderful people, and they were wonderful Rotarians, and they added tremendous value and enthusiasm and commitment to Rotary, and it's deeply sorry that we've lost them at this time, and may they rest in peace. For tomorrow morning, we've got another great keynote speaker. It's a friend of mine, Seth Goldman, who is the founder of Honest Tea and has moved on to Beyond Meat, and a new endeavor that he's going to talk about tomorrow. Why did I ask Seth to speak? For two reasons. Number one, he's an incredible entrepreneur. He built Honest Tea and sold it to Coca-Cola Company. He'll tell you the story. Number two, he's a philanthropist at heart. He believes that there's a very important need to bring private sector and organizations like Rotary together to drive philanthropic needs. So I know you'll love his presentation, and he's going to do a great job. Before that, we will have the district awards. It'll be very interesting to see which clubs have won and what they've won. And for those that may be attending and may not win an award, you can go home next year to your president-elect and encourage them to apply for these awards. I can only speak for, again, my club because I know it so well. Ever since we started winning the awards, we put them on our flag. There's very little room on our flag because we really try hard to win these awards. But when a new person comes into our club meeting, whether it's virtual or in person, they see all these incredible banners. It really is enthusiasm for them to know more about the club and know more about Rotary. Tomorrow we'll also be talking a little bit about the how do you apply services in a virtual world? And I think all of us are being challenged by that. It's one thing to meet virtually. It's another thing to do virtual projects. We've got a great speaker, the incoming president of one of the Baltimore clubs, and she'll talk a little bit about how that's done in best practices. I'll wrap up the event with some very nice awards to 120 honored participants in the district this year. There are a couple of very special awards, and I really hope that you'll all stay around for that. We have the distinct pleasure of having the incoming governor, District Governor-elect Jimmy Gorski, who will give her vision for where she's headed next year, and I'll wrap it up with some final thoughts. For now, let me thank you. You've been a delightful audience. We're well above the 100 number that we all pegged, and so we're grateful for that. Get a good night's sleep. We'll see you in the morning, and thank you very much for attending. Bye now.